Hey, what's going on there? It's House, bestrevenuewriter.com. To tell you about the art of building a list. Now, here's the thing. Even veterans have a tough time building a high quality list, but it's so important. And why do you think that is? Because it's tedious. It's boring. It goes completely against the nature of what a sales rep is. Nobody wants to sit there and enter data and do research. They want to be on the phones. They want to get out closing deals on the hunt. But there's something that might change your mind once you know the benefits of what it can do for your business, what it could do for your sales numbers, all of that good stuff that's going to get you either the commission or the business that you need. If we're going to talk about the benefits, imagine this here. Imagine a scenario where every call you place, every email, social media message that you send out is worth it. It has a high potential, high revenue potential, high close potential, whatever it is, that's going to move the needle forward for you. Imagine not having to spend as much time speaking to gatekeepers to try to fact find and get information, or just having a sexy brand name in general. Maybe it's a high prize client that has notable brand recognition that would help propel your business forward, give you more credibility, make closing future deals even easier. Whatever it is for your situation, the benefits are numerous. It is well worth the investment. And that's what we're going to talk about today, is how to build a list just like that. In addition to not being worried about wasting your time, you're going to get more familiar with the prospects that you do have. You're going to put more time and investment into becoming more valuable for the accounts. You'll start to build somewhat of a connection to them. When they tell you no, or they tell you to take you off your list, or they're not a good fit, you take them out and then you simply put somebody else back in their place. Business is based on high volume. Of course, adjust it to whatever you need. Whatever your number is going to be, the absolute minimum number. But at all times, you want to carry something like a hot list, a top valued list of some sort. Any sales purists will laugh at what I'm about to say, but you can start with an Excel sheet. It's very cost effective. You don't need a big, hefty CRM when you're first starting out, especially if you're a new startup or you're a small business owner just getting into the game of outbound sales. It has enough functionality at first. It will actually probably be better for you. That way you can slowly build your list, and then when you have more accounts and you need the functionality of a CRM, then you get it. You've made some miracles happen with just an Excel sheet. It's all about how you use the functionality of it. So one of those things is when you have this Excel sheet, you want to make sure that you're labeling your tabs and having the right qualifiers. That's huge. This is the step that often goes overlooked. Most people, they will buy a list, they'll send it to their team, and then they weed it out. Dead end number, take it out. Okay, move on to the next one. Oh, this email doesn't work. This person's no longer there. And then they go and update it. A lot of manual data removal at that point, so it kind of defeats the purpose of why you skipped this step in the first place: data entry and data removal. So how do we look for strong qualifiers? Well, of course, that's going to depend on the product or service that you offer. It's going to be a lot different if your contract sizes are $10,000 as opposed to somebody's that's $10. It becomes a game of volume versus high ticket contracts. You want to look at least at the employee size. Determine your strategy when you have companies in there that are 1 to 5 in size versus 50 employees to 150 employees, 500 to 5,000, 5,000 to 10,000, 10,000 plus. They're all going to require different strategies. Making a separate video on that, so don't worry about it if you want to know what those are. But for the most part, you need to know the size, because if it's a smaller company, the decision maker, you could likely go to the CEO and have a good chance of getting on the phone with them, with enough persistence, of course. The higher you go, the more brand recognition they have, the harder it is to break through, but typically more decision makers in the process. There would be sometimes up to 7 or 8 decision makers, depending on what it is that you offer. Is 7 to 8 different decision makers that also gives you a better chance to persuade someone to hear out what you have to say. It's up to you at that point to be able to also convince their colleagues, which is why it's important to build persona profiles, which I will also make a separate video on. There comes the issue of location. Now, in this modern era, you might think that that's not all that important, but the thing about location and having companies that are in your backyard running some sort of outbound local campaign is that you have more in common immediately. Research out there that shows that even if the first letter of your name, the initial, just somebody else's, you have a higher probability of setting a meeting or closing a deal with them. People like what's more familiar to them. That's even a small, more advanced strategy, segmenting your list. People that have the same name as you or the same first letter, that's a topic for another time. But making sure that you are deciding how are you going to run your strategy. If it's something that is location independent, which a lot of businesses are these days, well, then there's also the strategy of, let's say that you're in a Midwestern town and you're going after big cities. Well, your thing could be you're more cost effective. Your prospect doesn't have to pay big city prices or cheaper in overhead. I don't want to say that you're cheaper necessarily. Value's still the same, but because of your cost of living, it's drastically different than, let's say, somebody in New York's. That's going to factor into things. They might be able to get the same value from you without having to pay as much of the cost. So that could be another value proposition. It's important to put location on there as well as your time zones, because if you're in the West Coast and you're getting up 8 o'clock and then you start making your calls, well, it's already 10 o'clock right now. And then sometimes, depending on where you are, it could be 3 hours ahead. So the time zone difference does make a big deal. If you're setting meetings with somebody in the afternoon, they want to meet at 4 their time. It could be 1, 2 your time. So it's going to mess with your schedule a little bit if you don't have that sort of consistency. Make sure that you know what time zone that you're reaching out to as well. There's a lot of different qualities that go beyond just where they're located. Middle of the decision maker. Sometimes when you get so far into this profession, you forget there was a time when you didn't really know this information. Yes, it does sound painfully obvious, but you would be surprised how many startup founders I've worked with, consulted for, that don't see this as important immediately, or not that they don't see it important. They just didn't really think about it. They just think about calling a company. But here's the thing. You're still reaching out to a person. And let's say that you are offering marketing services. Your decision maker, your buyer, is likely a marketing director, a VP of marketing, for a financial solution. That's going to go to a CFO, chief financial officer. It's technology, a CTO, chief technology officer, so on and so forth. Well, those are going to have different qualifications. So that's going to be a lot different from me reaching out to, let's say, somebody that's a marketing manager versus a director of marketing. Many will disagree with me on this, and sometimes where they have different privileges of power, true. But a lot of the time, and most of the time, exception and not the rule, most of the time they're going to need approval from the higher ups. And most certainly level lower. It might affect their work, and then you sell them really well on it, and then they pick it up to their manager, their leader of the team, and they say, okay, you see the benefits and you're doing this more than me, I'll approve on it. Many different scenarios, but the title, you want to make sure that you are finding the right title, spending the least amount of time with people that can't move the needle for you. Throw this one in there. This is more on the advanced side. This is more further down the road when you're working your list. But if this prospect in particular, in this age of the internet, you can find practically anything about anyone. Now, it's important not to be a creep about it, of course, but if there's certain information that could be helpful or useful to both you and your prospect, then take it. If they're a media darling and they're talking about their plans, their values, and what they find important, well, maybe that will give you some insight on where to spend your time. Maybe this person says that, hey, we need a analytics platform this year. We're getting more into big data. And let's say that you offer that. That's like finding the red dots on one of those sonar scanners. It's revealing themselves more about what's important to them as opposed to something that may or may not be important to somebody else. You want to take as much guesswork out of things before you reach out. And they also might have values that you can relate to. They might have said something that your organization does that resonates with them. Let's say that your responsibility causes that are important to them, like an animal shelter or something like that, that they're opening up a bunch of them. Well, if that's something that your company is also doing, there might be a better shot that you guys would be a good fit for a business relationship. So get creative with that part. Those are the 4 main columns. And I say those ones because, of course, you want to have their first name, their last name, their email address, and phone number, else you're not reaching them at all. Non-obvious ones that sound just like they're useless columns, they totally aren't. Make sure that you're constantly updating your list as well. I have found that the decay rate, which means the rate at which email addresses no longer become valid. Post-pandemic for myself, it has been 5%. The industry standard before that was about 2 to 4%. It happens for a variety of factors as well. The person moves on to another company. They're no longer there. It was a spam filter trap that they had set. It could also be a burner email that's not their regular email that they use. A lot of different reasons for why an email just no longer works. You're getting bounce backs. They could have blocked you. But make sure that at least once a week you're going in and updating it. The clean list is a high revenue list. And I have no doubt in my mind that you're going to start setting a lot more meetings, closing more deals, bringing in more revenue. This is House, bestrevenuewriter.com. We will see you next time.